into more details. You found out I was born in Germany, and my father was taken to a concentration camp, the Night of Broken Glass, which we call in German Kristallnacht. Because why is it called Kristallnacht? Because the Germans, the SS, the Nazi, just went and broke all the windows on Jewish homes, Jewish businesses, and burning of the synagogue and burning of books that were written by Jewish authors. That happened the 9th of November, 1938, which is 76 years ago. And we were, the Germans are pretty clever. They were pretty clever. The 9th of November in 1938 happened to be a Friday night. Friday night in the Jewish tradition, the Jewish religion, is the start of the Sabbath. Your family sits together, you have a nice meal, your mother blesses the Sabbath candles, your father blesses the children to wish for a good, healthy week. As this was happening, and we happened to live in the center of the city of Chemnitz. We lived in an apartment building on the 3rd floor, and the windows were facing the street. So we heard this tremendous commotion of them breaking the glass at the businesses. And I said to my parents, "What's happening? What's all that?" I got scared. I was 9 years old. And they said, "Don't worry, they're celebrating something." They didn't want to scare me. Remember, there was no TV, there was no what would come in the news right away. So we finished our meals, but not that great because scared. My parents knew something was coming. So we went to bed, and in the middle of the night, I heard this tremendous noise, ringing the bell at the apartment and knocking on the door, and there, my father or mother, I can't remember who went to the front door and opened, and there were these 2 German SS men dressed in black with the Hakenkreuz and black boots, and they took my father, just baited till he could put some pants on, and like you see in movies, dragged him out of the apartment and took him to the Central Police Station in Chemnitz. The next morning, which was November 10th, from the Central Police Station, he was taken to a concentration camp by the name of Buchenwald, because Buchenwald was the closest to Chemnitz. Chemnitz is East Germany. That's it. And in those days, they did not take women. It was before the war. They just took all Jewish men to the concentration camp. And in that concentration camp were political prisoners that were against Hitler's regime, gypsies, and homosexuals. My father was put in that concentration camp. We lost our German citizenship. My parents and I and all Jews of Germany became the word stateless. That means you don't belong to any country. I came to America in 1948 with a piece piece of paper that said stateless. I didn't belong anywhere. But in 2010, I was given back my German citizenship. Now I have dual citizenship. I'm an American, but I'm also a German. But that was in another life. So what do? First of all, my mother had to make sure that the glass in front of our business was cleaned up. We had to pay, my mother had to pay for all the merchandise that they took away. They plundered all the merchandise. My dad had a store of haberdashery, of ladies' and men's garments. My mother had to pay the German government for all the glass, for all the damage, and for all the merchandise that they actually took. We had to prove we were leaving Germany. Where do we go? America wouldn't take us in. You had to have an affidavit. You had to have a sponsor. And you were coming here by quota. German quota, Polish quota, Austrian quota, Hungarian quota, was all divided. Okay, where do we go? My mother obtained, with money or jewelry, false papers that we were going to Santiago, Chile. Those papers were worthless. But they were good enough to take to Buchenwald, the concentration camp, for my father to be released if we could prove we would be leaving Germany within 6 months. My mother, they were always righteous among the nations. Righteous German took my mother to Buchenwald and handed the papers, these false papers, to the commander of the camp. She went around January, February. You can't exact dates. And my father was released the end of April. We had to be out of Germany, remember, within 6 months. Again, where do we go? There were good people. The Belgian, at that time, Belgium today is very bad, very anti-Semitic and anti-everything. But in those days, there was a queen by the name of Astrid. She said, you cross the border. I closed my eyes. I don't know anything about it. We'll give you sanction. You'll never become a Belgian citizenship, but at least you can be here. Now, my parents hired a smuggler. Does anybody know what a smuggler is? Yes?
Someone who illegally carries things over borders.
Exactly. Today, the kids tell me it's called coyote. This coyote, or this smuggler, lived in Cologne. Chemnitz to Cologne is like going from east to west. We got on a train, and all we could carry was, maybe a backpack, a little bit bigger than that, with 3 German D-marks. We traveled by train from Chemnitz to Cologne, which was about a 7-8 hour train ride. He met us there. He gave, I guess, my parents what he would be wearing, what he looked like, and I remember years later, he had an accent. He didn't speak German like we spoke German, and I found out he was a Spaniard. And he met us at the train station in Cologne. Had to be very clandestine. The Germans were watching. took us from Cologne by car to Aachen. That's the last border town before you cross into Belgium. So there, usually, I think there was 2 other people. Never took too many, because the Germans, they were smart. They were watching the borders. They knew this was happening. Not only would they have shot us, they would have shot him as well. So we crossed in the middle of the night, the Ardennes forest, and we ended up in Malmedy. Malmedy is the first Belgian town. And there was this big truck there, put us on the truck, and they took us to Brussels. Brussels is the capital of Belgium. And they took us, it looked like a huge auditorium, and they had tables set like this, maybe a little bit bigger, with the alphabet, like A to G. My maiden name was Feller, so we were in the first group. They interviewed us. They spoke German, because that's all we spoke. They gave us like food stamps. I never knew food stamps, so when people talk today about food stamps, I said, it's nothing. I was on food stamps. Gave us a little pocket money, and they found us like a room to stay. I came from an apartment where I had my own room. We had a bathroom, we had a kitchen, we had a living room, a dining room, one room. No bathroom. You wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go 3 flights down. That was a culture shock. But we said we're safe, we don't have to worry. This was September 1939. I started school. I only spoke German. In Brussels, the main language is French and Flemish. Kids talk about being bullied. I've been there. I was made fun of. I couldn't speak French. I sat like a duck. I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. But 10 years old, you learn a language like that. And I learned French. I made friends. Didn't last too long, because May of 1940, if you studied world history, is when the war broke out. And the Germans marched into Belgium, Holland, and France. And what's going to happen? We're now going to be under the German bullets. So not just the Jewish refugees, but the Belgian population hated the Germans as well, dating back to World War I. So we were told, if you got to Dunkirk, Dunkirk was a very important port in World War II. The British, the Germans, big fights. But they said if you got to Dunkirk and escaped the German occupation in Belgium, Dunkirk is in France, there would be ships there from the Great Britain that would take you to London. And we said, wonderful, because my sister in June of 38, before the Kristallnacht, went to Great Britain. She actually went to Scotland, Edinburgh. The British government brought young women from the age of 18 to 26 as domestic help. And my sister was one of them to go. So we thought, wow, we get to Great Britain. We even, the little bit that we could ship, we had shipped to Great Britain, like bedding and a few clothes. So with a freight forwarder, we thought, beautiful. So we marched every day from Brussels. Not just us, but the whole, even Belgian Christians, anybody, to try and get to Dunkirk to get on those ships. We marched every day and at night found refuge in churches, auditorium, slept on the floor, and as we walked on this two-lane highway, they told me the distance would be if you left the ferry building in San Francisco and marched all the way to Gilroy. And at night we found refuge. Okay, we got to Dunkirk. The Germans were there before us. They had these big army trucks. They didn't question Jews, Belgian, Christians, whatever. They just hoisted us on to the truck and took us back to Brussels. We were in Brussels in May. Now we're under German rules. This is my original Star of David that my mother had to sew on my garments. You had to pick it up at the police station. And your ID had a big J for Jew, Juif in French. Because somebody said to me, one of the students said, what would have happened if you didn't wear your star? The Germans were very smart. You had to carry an ID, even a child. And if they question you enough, you're going to admit, yeah, I'm Jewish, but I didn't want to wear the star. Poof, finish. And somebody keeps questioning you, and you're under duress, you're going to admit to anything. Jews were no longer allowed in public schools, in hospitals, any open space. But there was a righteous woman. She was 19 years old, not much older than you guys. And she said, she went to the archdiocese, like you heard, and said, Monsignor, we gotta make a difference. She and 3 other young students of the University of Brussels. And what did they do? The archdiocese got a hold of the different convents, boys' convents, girls' convents. And I ended up, as it said, in the convent Saint Antoine de Padoue, Saint Anthony of Padua, which is the saint, which if you are Catholic, you must remember, if you lose something, you pray to Saint Anthony of Padua to get back what you can't remember where you left. I entered the convent in 1942. And like she said, very staunch lady, very strict. But you know what? Like I said, strictness and discipline never hurt anybody. No, it makes you strong, makes you respectful of people. I became Catholic. I was baptized. I had First Communion. I was confirmed. And a lot of the adults as well as students said to me, the nuns must have made you. I said, absolutely no. I did not want to be pointed at as a Jew. Never had to wear this again. I felt very comfortable, and we had to study Latin because the church service was all in Latin, not like today where it's in English. I felt very comfortable. Actually, I stayed Catholic for about 2 years after the war. And I go today, if I've gone to weddings funerals at churches, and I can follow it. And now it's in English. It's very easy, just a couple of prayers on that. But, like you heard, we couldn't stay at that convent because the Mother Superior saw these two guys looking in 1944 in June for British parachutists, because that was right before D-Day, before Normandy landing, and they sent the parachutists down to check out the country. We left, we went to this other convent, but luckily didn't have to stay there long. I didn't find out until 1991, when we had a first reunion of hidden children, that did the Mother Superior hide parachutists in the convent? Was the 30 Jewish children? Or was it just the imagination of the Germans? Not indeed. She did not hide one parachutist, she hid two. So she was a pretty amazing lady, hiding 30 Jewish children and two British parachutists. If the Germans had caught them, what do you think would have happened to her? She and the nuns would have all been killed. I came after the war. Not only did I lose my childhood, I lost my mother, because my mother had a stroke during these horrible years from 1943. She had end of 42, beginning of 43. She had a stroke. Jews were not allowed in hospital. And again, a righteous Christian came to the house and took the blood out of my mother's arm to release the pressure on the brain. But she never really recovered. She mixed me up with my sister. She died. She's buried in Brussels. So during this, I lost my mother at a very young age. My father, through the Red Cross, found a half-sister of my mother who sponsored me to come to the United States. She's provided an affidavit. I had to go through very, very extensive examinations in Belgium with the embassy to check that I did not carry any diseases, that I was not part of communism. And I finally arrived in San Francisco, May 15, 1948. Came from Belgium to London. I got to see my sister, then took the SS Mauritania, the boat, to New York. From New York, I took the train. I was 16 years old. Took the train to Chicago, transferred from Chicago to a train to San Francisco. It was called the SS San Francisco or something like that. When I got here, you landed in Oakland, because even today trains still land in San Francisco, and a ferry took you to the ferry building, because the ferry building was just like a train station then. It wasn't like today with shops and the restaurants. And my aunt and her daughter met me. And the first word in perfect German, she still spoke perfect German, she said to me, I'll say it in English, AnneMarie, you're now in America. Forget what happened. We don't talk about it. Nobody cares. And it wasn't until 1993, which you'll see later, where they had the first reunion of hidden children in New York City at the Marriott Marquis. None of us spoke about it. Was my aunt right to tell me? I I don't know. Maybe she meant well that I shouldn't talk about it. She also told me, you're in America now, and I promised Uncle Sam you would not become a burden. I arrived here on a Friday. Sunday paper, her daughter and her looked job availability. I spoke English a little bit. I learned even English in the convent. I got a wonderful education, but not enough to really work in an office. But they found me a job. Guess what? A file clerk at National Automobile Club on Pine Street. They took me down for an interview. I got the job. And from there I went on to I went to night school. I went to first I went to Commerce High to learn English. They were on Venice. And then I myself said, no, I wanted a little higher than that. And I went to San Francisco State. They had, I don't know if they still have on Herman Street downtown, night school, I don't know. And I learned English and public speaking, because public speaking teaches you how to enunciate and everything. I met my husband, got married in 1950, met him at the Jewish Community Center in San Francisco. And then the Korean War broke out. And my husband, who had been in World War II, had joined with his buddies, the reserves. And he was called back. And we had to travel. I joined him. We had no kids or nothing. I joined him, and his first base was Norfolk, Virginia in 1950. And that's when I encountered again anti-Semitism, where I was shocked. They had benches, black, white, 1950 in the United States of America. I said, oh my God, I'm back in Germany under Hitler. I got on a bus to go. We lived a little bit in the outskirts. I got on a bus, and there were empty seats in the back, and I sit down, and this white woman comes up to me and says, in this patois of Southern drawl, that's not for you, honey. That's for that. And she used the N-word. 1950 in Norfolk, Virginia. So don't tell me there was no anti-this and anti-that right here in this country. My husband, he always tells me, tell them, I was in the service in World War II and in the Korean War. And they would tell me, let me see your hands. Why? Because Jews don't work with their hands. So this just shows you, it hasn't gone away. It's right here. Right here in this country. And if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, they still would have those benches. I thought I was back in Germany because that's what was in Germany. Bathrooms separate, benches separate. And that's why you have to make the difference. You have to accept people. And if you hear of any remarks about this one or that one, speak up. Accept people, the color of their skin, their background, their religious belief, their sexual orientation. We're all human beings. And you have to make a difference. Because my generation, they're dying by the day. I mean, from the speakers, there's not too many of us left. So I hope that you will make a difference. And you will make sure when you hear of something, say, no, don't do that. I wish it had been then. question. You do, but part of getting old is the hearing goes. So if you have a question, can you stand up and come and let me know what the question is? I'm sorry, but there's no mic, so.
Okay.
Okay.
My question is, did you know who the other girls in hiding were at your college?
Somehow, the one in particular went to the convent the same day I did. And somehow the others, you kind of felt. I knew about the ones that I became friends with, there were about 4 of us, so I knew them, right. Yes? Yes.
Did the other people who weren't Jewish who were in hiding, did they know that you were in hiding?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, because we were of the same, somehow you connect. Yes?
I was wondering what happened, or if you knew what happened to your sister and to your dad.
Okay. My sister ended up living in England. She was married. She had a daughter. Her daughter is now 72 years old. My sister passed away. My father actually came to America 2 years after I did, because my aunt also provided a visa for him, and he's actually died in 1969, and he's buried in Colma at the Jewish cemetery. Yes.
How did you feel when you saw your dad after he was released from the concentration camp?
Very strange. That's a very good question. I didn't really recognize my dad. First of all, he had all his head shaven, but that was beside the point. But he used to be a very jubilant, happy person. And when he came back, it was like a different person. He was bitter. He felt, how could God watch what I watched and not stop it? So he was never the same. Never the same. I mean, he was like a mother and father to me, but he had a lot of hang-ups. And that's due to what he witnessed. Because when he went there, they had some rabbis in the convent, and they were beaten to a pulp. There's even a rabbi, a synagogue named after one of the rabbis in Los Angeles, Stephen something.
S-wise?
Yes, honey.
What's one thing that you want us to take away from this? Like the main thing that you want us to take away from this story?
What I want to take away from the Holocaust?
No, like from your story, what do you want us to really remember? And think
What
about?
I said, to learn to accept people and not witness when you hear somebody being derogatory about someone's religion, someone's color. Speak up, and that it doesn't happen again. Because look what's going on now. I was telling your teacher, Tuesday I spoke at Mercy High School in San Francisco, and not me alone. There was a gentleman from Darfur, and he spoke about the atrocities that were done to his people. And he said the same thing. Your generation's got to make sure, while you live in this free country, that doesn't happen. So he spoke. It was a very good combination, because those people suffered the same. Families lost, and it's horrible. Yes? Oh, here's one, and then I'll cut you.
Okay, so you said you had a really happy childhood. What is one of your fondest memories of that?
Oh, my fondest memory. I had like a little kitchen and a dollhouse, and that was my fondest memory, playing with it. And I felt so lucky. I have a great-granddaughter, 3 years old, and she got one of those little kitchens. And when I got to the house, I said, oh my God, I need to play with it. I said we'd have tea and all of that. That was because that's what I loved and missed. But I I'm alive, so that's most important. Yes, honey?
So today, what religion do you practice?
Okay, I am ethnically Jewish, but as far as religion, like I was telling someone before, I'm more spiritual. I believe in all religions, but spirituality to me means acceptance of people and that there's a supreme power. Doesn't matter if it's Jesus, if it's God, if it's Muhammad, we all say the same. As this young girl, when she did this video, and she was a Palestinian, and you know, a lot of people think, oh, Palestinians hate the Jews, and her mother said, we're actually the same. Because in ancient history, if you learn, there wouldn't be Arabs or Christians, it would all be the same. I come around now. Yes? Who was first here? Okay.
How long did you stay in Norfolk, Virginia, and did you travel anywhere else?
Okay, I stayed in Norfolk with my husband. He was in the Navy for about 6 months, and then he was transferred to London, Connecticut. That was fine. But my husband and I did a lot of traveling. We went to Europe several times and traveled through the United States, so I pretty much am traveled out now. I'm happy to stay home. Yes?
How did you maintain hope while you were in hiding? How did you maintain hope and keep yourself busy?
And while I was in hiding in the convent, well, it was school. It was like here. We had homework. It was a boarding school, like that. If you stayed here, we had school, homework. We had kitchen duties, laundry duties. They kept us very busy. The only time we had free time was the evening reading. And that was also education. Yes?
Did you ever go back and visit the convent?
Yes, I visited several times. I visited the first time in 1970 with my daughter, and it was still a school then. Today, it is an old age home. And I also brought my granddaughter in 2005, and she got to see one of the nuns who was at the time we were in the convent a novice. You know what a novice is? It's when a young woman enters the convent and gives her life. And they entered in those days at the age of 13. And when I saw her in 2005, she was so happy. She runs this old age home now. The convent looks exactly like it did when we were students, except now the dorms where we slept are made into little rooms for these old ladies, and she runs it. Okay, who's who here? Yes?
How were you able to keep your star? Because, like, while you were in hiding.
Well, I did not bring this to the convent. No, that was stayed, I guess, with my parents. I can't remember. Those little things I don't remember. But when I was ready to come to the United States and I wanted to bring my little pictures that we took in the convent with like one of those old-fashioned box cameras, I had it with that. Yes, she's next.
Okay, so how did you and your mom feel when your dad was being taken away?
Oh, you know what? All I did was cry. I mean, I was so young, I didn't really realize truly. I was not as emancipated like 10-year-olds are today. I was, I didn't know. I was scared, more frightened than anything. Yes?
Okay, so you mentioned you met your husband at the JCC, so was he Jewish too?
Yes, he
And
was.
did his family go through the Holocaust?
No.
Or-
His family came from Russia many, many years ago. His father died when he was very young. His mother came from Minsk, Russia. So So, I mean, they went through pogroms in the 1900s, but we did not go through the Holocaust. Yes?
Do you have any other jobs when you were living in San Francisco?
I started, like I told you, with the National Automobile Club. Then I worked for American Hawaiian Steamship Company because speaking languages. And then we went to back east to Norfolk. I even worked there. I remember I worked in an insurance office. And then I came and I had a son. And I didn't work for years while my kids were growing up. I worked for the Unified School District. I worked at John Adams Adult School as a clerk. And then I got a job. When my kids were in high school, I got a job for a freight forwarder. And I did a lot of traveling to customers because they were shipping things to Silicon Valley, all over the United States, computers. And the reason I got that job because I spoke French, and we were dealing with a lot of countries where French was needed. Yes.
When you were in the convent, did you receive news about what was going on in Germany?
Yes. Oh yes, they kept the nuns kept us well informed. Yes.
What happened to your parents while you were in hiding in the convent?
They were hiding in this one room, like, it was very similar, if you saw the movie, The Diary of Anne Frank. It was one room, and the landlady not only hid my parents, she hid also a couple that was Belgian from the Congo, because Hitler would have exterminated them as well. So she hid these two, my parents and that couple, husband and wife, and she had a way, if she thought somebody was at the door, front door, that she wasn't sure of, she had a cat, and the cat's name was Me-You, and if she hollered a few times, Me-You, Me-You, that meant this couple from Congo and my parents, quiet. So she was nice too.
For more questions?
Yes?
Okay. So, you talked about how your dad was changed after he came back from the concentration camp.
Yes.
Do you feel like you changed at all after going through the Holocaust?
Yes. I am no longer the spoiled little brat. Because I was very spoiled, because my sister was 14 years older, so consequently I was the baby and I was spoiled. And I learned never take any life for granted. You don't know what can happen. You know, it made me like a hard-headed Hannah. Really. It did, because it does change you. You know, it brings you closer to your family and to your friends that you've been, like we always say, my friend who lives down in San Francisco, we consider each other like soul sisters, because we went through all this.
Girls, maybe another question or two, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yes?
What does the symbol on the star represent?
The J is, see, the Star of David is, you know, that's in the synagogue, and it's a Jewish Star of David, and the J meant Jew. In German, Jude, but being it was in Belgium, it was in French, Juif. And then this lady. Yeah, you.
So how did you start doing these talks? How did you start doing these
Okay,
talks?
it's a very good question. In 1993, when I came back from the first meeting of the Hidden Children, I was working at Kaiser Permanente, clerical work, reception. And one of the doctors said to me, "Oh, AnneMarie, my son is studying World War II, and the teacher thinks it would be so great if you could speak." It was at Stewart Hall, okay, on Broadway. And I said, "Oh my God, I've never spoken in public. I don't know what to say." She said, don't worry, I'll ask questions. So she took me to Stuart Hall. I've been back there since 3 times. And I started speaking. And then they formed this Holocaust Speakers Bureau. And here I am. Yes.
Alright, so do you remember what you did and how you felt on the day that the war was officially declared over?
I did what, honey?
Sorry, I
I'm
was speaking
sorry.
fast.
Do you remember the day the war was declared over?
Oh,
Do you
we
remember
all
that?
went in, in Europe, they have what's called Grand Place. They have all these big centers. And in Brussels, the Grand Place is where the city hall is. If anybody has ever been to Belgium, to Brussels, they have this beautiful Grand Place with the city hall with all gold lettering. And everybody went there and danced. Shitterbug. Yeah, really. And you know who I met just as close as I'm with you? General Eisenhower and General Montgomery, because they were all there. You know, they were all dancing, jubilating, and celebrating. Yeah,
That's I think a really good question to end on.
yeah, they all did good questions, and thank you so much.